Hello everybody. It is Sunday the 6th of April. I've been trying to make a video for a few days and it didn't quite come together, and now I'm talking about something completely different from what I was going to talk about. It suddenly led me into a different direction, but maybe that is where I was supposed to go anyway. I just didn't see it. Now, the whole thing started with, I've been contacted by somebody and I think we're going to have a conversation this afternoon about Yaldabaoth. Right, so I thought I might brush up on Yaldabaoth. Dug out the Nag Hammadi scriptures. It's been a while since I looked at it. Just so that I'm on the same page. Right. So, and that's what I was going to start making videos about, Yaldabaoth, my thoughts about Yaldabaoth. And as I said, it didn't come together. But it led me in a completely different direction now. Now the first thing, and again talking about myself, and really gaining knowledge on the spirit, which is what the Gnostics did, what others are doing. I want to show you this here. And as I said, it happened years ago when I thought something was approaching me, and at that time I said no, absolutely not. I absolutely closed myself off. I'm still closed. And I said out loud, I think I said it out loud, I need to understand. I'm not going into this out of ignorance, not knowing what is happening, not understanding what is happening. And I think that happens to so many. They suddenly receive a download and they have no idea what is going on. And many, again, indiscriminately start speaking with what I would now call the voice of a prophet. And that is to say, they just repeat what it is they're hearing. And worse, many think it is the only truth. There is only one truth, there is only one. I'm receiving of the one, which is probably the worst mistake you can make. They've connected to something that is most definitely not the only thing. Creation is made out of many parts, many consciousnesses. Each consciousness, again, trees of knowledge that have knowledge according to their own, to themselves. And that give off their fruit. So you actually, that is what you're doing. You're going into the garden of knowledge, of trees of knowledge, and you're eating of the fruit of the trees. But they're different trees. And no tree is the one. The only one, the only truth. So that's something you need to understand. Again, there is something you need to understand before you go into this. Because otherwise you don't know what it is you're doing. Right. So I said no. I said I need to understand. And I had questions. Questions come into my head that I need to, what is this actually talking about? And I need the answer to that. And one question that came to me, has been around forever. And I just found the answer to it. And that question was, what form will that take? Right. Okay. What do you mean? What form will that take? And again, to me, but that might be again out of myself from the start. I was thinking of beings. What form of being would that be? But that is one possibility, but it's not the only possibility. And that is what came to me. Now, again, back to what I was looking at in the Nag Hammadi scriptures. As I said, I was looking at Yaldabaoth, the story of Yaldabaoth, and Didn't quite get it. Couldn't put it together. Some bits came to me, some knowing came to me of what John, I think John is his name in here. It is the Gospel of John, so we call him John, whatever his name was. There were some points where I could see what John was talking about, but others I just didn't get together. Okay, and here is what form does it take. First of all, gnosis, any kind of knowledge, does not come by us going out there. It will not come that way. It will come by going inside. That's what the Gnostics did. They went inside. They did not expand out there. They went inside. Knowledge according to self. Inside, deep inside. So again, if you are being led to look out there for your salvation, forget it. It's not coming from there. It's coming from in here. Seek the kingdom within first. Right. So that's what they're doing. They're going inside. And they know something on a very energetic, intuitive, energy, feeling kind of level. See, there's the problem. Words. That's a problem. Words. Trying to express your knowledge through words. Now, I still think they're going out, or in, rather, too far. Beyond what they can even fathom. If you cannot express it in words, you cannot bring that knowledge to earth. You can't make it be understood by others. You don't have the words. And if the Hermetics say that, going too far into all, or the seeking of all, will lead to insanity. Well, maybe they're not insane, but they certainly sound it. And it is exactly when I read the scripture, John, the Gospel of John, and then it really sounded like John St. Julien, spaced out babble. Because you can't express it in words. And you cannot bring that knowledge to earth in that way. In fact, I think words are probably the worst form it can take. And here, what form will it take? And that's what the question was talking about. What form will it take? Will it take the form of words? Which, as I said, is probably the worst expression, the worst medium by which you can convey the knowledge. Something else popped up on my feed, on my internet suggestions, and it was the film Mozart. For the last 2 days, I was looking at clips about Mozart. And here is. There is a scene where the court composer, the official court composer, that guy that is telling the entire story in the film, Mozart, and he was obviously eaten up by jealousy, where he is looking at what Mozart had written down as music, and he said it was just incredible. He said he's just written it down. There were no corrections. That there's one draft. It's all there. He never corrected a thing, and it is perfect. And I said he was eaten up by jealousy. And he said, in the film he says more than once, it is as if God is speaking. And another thing he said is, it is as if he has taken a dictation. Something was already fully there and he's just taking a dictation. And I really think that is what Mozart did. What form does it take? It expressed itself in music. But I think it was a message. For Mozart, it expressed itself in music. That was a download. He took a dictation, and it didn't produce words in his mind, it produced notes, because that's what he was. I mean, from childhood, he was in music. That's the way he was thinking. And there are others where it would express itself in a different way. Leonardo da Vinci, definitely downloads. I mean, some of his sketches or drawings of what would have then been very futuristic machines. It expressed itself in drawing a picture, because he was a painter. Another one, Freemasons, the master builders, those that had knowledge that expressed itself in a building, in building a building. An expression of a knowledge, of a download. Yeah? And the being suddenly goes and builds a building. Because that's what they were. Masons. I was thinking of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Yeah, and again, people say, oh, they had such great knowledge of architecture or of, well, physics, obviously, laws of physics, how to build this thing, stuff like that. Such advanced knowledge of that. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they received a download. Maybe they were one of the original master builders, the first Freemasons, where the knowledge expressed itself in a building. Right now, there is a download happening at this moment. And I think it is expressing itself in technology, as technology. Yeah? They're thinking in ways of technology, and it is expressing itself in that. And it's creating a picture, it's creating an image in this world. So that is actually the answer to the question of what form will it take if I were to allow this thing to happen. If, and there's still a bit if, I have self-determination. Yeah, it's up to me whether that happens or not. What form would it take? For me, what would I do suddenly? What lunatic thing would I start doing? How would I express the knowledge? Again, I had from the beginning the feeling that, it would take the form of beings. Again, that is what's happening to the Gnostics that wrote down those stories. It took the form of beings. Yeah, Sophia, Yaldabaoth. They're storytellers. I'm pretty much a storyteller. So for me, it might take the form of a story. I'm a bit into music, definitely not a Mozart. Although Mozart was probably not a Mozart. It was a download that was the Mozart. So, and there's, I think, again, knowing what it is we're doing. We're expressing a knowledge. The knowledge is in what it is we're producing. You know them by their fruit. You know the spirit by what it creates. And then you look at the form, whether that is a story or a piece of music or a building or a painting. And what is the spirit inside of that? What is the actual knowledge that was conveyed? Now, again, you cannot look at every piece of music. Or there's, again, something that was in the Mozart story. And that is happening in this world. Those that are not guided by the Spirit. Yeah? Where the chord composer, again, he was composing music, obviously, nothing on the level of Mozart. I said, eaten up by jealousy. But he had the craft See, there's the craft and there's the art. Art would be then coming from the spirit. But he had the craft, he knew how to put notes together. Yeah? And he did that. And again, he said Mozart had no corrections in his music. He probably corrected it left, right, and center. Or this, going bing, bing, yeah, that sounds good, bing, bing, bing. Or maybe bing, bing, bing. Or maybe, going that way, mechanical, putting the notes together, trying to create a piece of music that sounds good. But it was not on the level of a Mozart, because what he wrote down was a message from somewhere else, from a higher knowledge. He was not composing a piece of music. He was writing down a message in music. And that's why those that just have the craft but don't have the spirit cannot produce the same level of, the same quality of music or the same buildings as well. Right now we have the knowledge of architecture, but we don't have the spirit. What we're building at the moment has no spirit. Increasingly so, if I look at the stuff that's out there. Those that tried to replicate the Great Pyramid of Giza, they tried to build pyramids after that, and they were nowhere near the same quality, nor did they last the same amount of time, and a lot of them did collapse because they didn't have the knowledge. They tried to get the knowledge by getting the knowledge of architecture, the craft. But that was not it. The knowledge was spirit. And you cannot replicate it without the spirit. Not by just knowledge of the physical. You can't. They didn't. I think even now we cannot replicate the Great Pyramid of Giza. So there's the answer to my question. What form does it take? Now, there's something else, somewhere else I wanted to go with this, and it's just gone out of my head. Shoot. Yes. Right. So I really think words are the worst possible medium by which we can convey knowledge. The most restrictive one. But, and here comes, and here's that there's somebody on a different level getting knowledge beyond words, beyond the physical, higher knowledge, deeper knowledge. It is deeper knowledge of yourself. Yeah, it's not out there, it's in here. And they're trying to convey it to somebody who's not on that knowledge and its level of knowledge, and that is not working. It's absolutely not working. Even with music, yeah? It's a better medium, but I don't think you can fully convey what is being said. Now, at the moment, we have got, again, this idea, and I really think, because we are receiving messages at the moment, everybody is, a lot of people are. Yeah, and a lot of them are receiving words, which I say, the worst possible thing that can happen. They are receiving words like united field of consciousness. We are all the same. We are, it's all in the Creator. We are one. Yeah, again, they're receiving the words, they're interpreting the words, and what's coming out of it is dreadful nonsense. Like, we are all the same, the Creator is light, good and bad does not exist, that kind of thing. Which, again, you bring it down to reality. Hello? Of course good and bad does exist. Of course we are not all the same. Yeah, so that is not what the message is speaking about. Again, the physical is an expression of the spirit. Yeah, matter does not form itself. It is formed by the Spirit. It is depiction of the Spirit. Yeah, and if in matter we are not all the same, then we are not. That is a truth. And good and bad does most certainly exist. Yeah. So again, they received words and they're interpreting it wrongly. But if there is a united field of consciousness, and there is a level on which we all speak the same language, and that is beyond words. And then for people to communicate, they need to be on the same level. They need to be in the same space. But there may be a space where everything communicates in the same way. Everything. Everything that has form here communicates in the same way. We would understand what the plant is saying. We would understand what the animal is saying. Not in words. Not in words. But we would know each other. We would understand each other. And here's the story of the Tower of Babel. Yeah? When man spoke one language. When they spoke one language, and I'd say it may have been expressed in words, but I think they communicated on a different level. Yeah? Communicated with each other on a different level, and maybe even communicated with knowledge outside of this world. Right? And then they got together, and again, it expressed itself, the knowledge expressed itself in a building, the Tower of Babel. And maybe also expressed itself in technology, because I think that had something to do with technology. And here God comes and says, that is eating of the tree of life. That is eating of the tree of life. That is being in the united field of consciousness. Again, it serves to build something outside of ourselves. That's what they did anyway. They built the tower. So God destroyed the tower and they scattered them. Yeah? And then their languages became confused. And here it is, because they were of one language, because they were connected to one another. I mean, I think they should have still been connected to one another even if they were scattered, because, again, maybe they didn't do it consciously. And then when they were physically scattered, they thought or assumed that the other connection was no longer there. And I think it would have been still there if they had been really aware of what it was they were doing. So they may have done it unconsciously. And then you have this idea in this world, anyway, where once you split up a species and you put them in two different environments, they're still part of the same species, but they start developing individually. Yeah, and they're becoming different from each other in some ways, although they are still part of the same species. So, and I think that's what happened. Yeah, you put them into different environments, they're still connected to one another, they're still sharing their thoughts, they're still sharing their knowledge, but they're no longer connected to one another. And then you develop, again, trees of knowledge. You grow trees of knowledge independent from one another, and then the two trees can no longer communicate because they're becoming too different from one another. And I think that's the confusion of language. But, here's the but, there may still that level, that united field of consciousness where we are all speaking the same language. And it is a language that is not expressed in words or anything physical. I think that level exists. That is the level where we can truly communicate with one another, where we can truly know each other. It is also the level where we are naked. Yeah, where our truth can be seen, where we are known, where we know and we are being known. Which, if the wrong thing knows you, that there's another problem. There's a lot to think about. There's many possibilities. It's not all good. Not everything up there is or out on that level is good. There are different intentions there. If those are living beings, they have needs, they have desires, they have intentions. And whether you should be known to them, if that is even a good idea. Again, how do we distinguish before we even go there? How do we know what it is we're doing? How do we direct our energy to the correct point? Oh, you're all there ever was and ever will be, and to hell with the consequences, I don't think is the way forward. I think we've done that. I think people have done that, to hell with the consequences, or thinking it's all good up there, out there. And I think it had disastrous consequences because they were not facing a reality. It is as below, so above. Yeah, what's real here is real there. But yeah, I think there is a place where we do all speak the same language. We are united in the same language, where we have a level of understanding of each other that cannot be conveyed through words. So last thing at the moment, how did we get here? How did we forget? Because that knowledge was in this world. We knew. I don't know if we fully understood what we knew, but we could do it. Let's say like this, we could do it. Not sure we knew what we were doing completely, but we could do it. And then that knowledge disappeared. Now, one of the reasons might be because we were given, and that is what the story says, and that's what our DNA evidence says, that we were given the ability of speech. Yeah, and we may have started relying more and more of that whilst the other ability atrophied. That is one possibility. Another possibility is, and that is really again the story in the Garden of Eden, and that is they woke up, they knew each other. Here's the thing, they knew each other. Yeah? They were connected to each other on a different level. I think they saw a truth of God, and their gut reaction was fear, which I would say was truth. Maybe it was truth, maybe it was out of ignorance, I don't know. But they covered themselves up. They covered themselves up. They no longer gave of their entire truth to God. And then they fell from the knowledge of God, they got disconnected. But it was Adam and Eve that did it, out of fear. So we may have covered ourselves up. Here's the thing, we may have covered ourselves up. Out of a bad experience, we may have covered ourselves up. We broke the connection. And again, at the moment, I keep thinking about this thing in Turkey that they're digging up. Tepe something. You probably know what I'm talking about. That big building. And, well, apparently somebody a long time ago very carefully covered that thing up. Yeah, very carefully covered that thing up. And now well, obviously we're digging it up again. And I hear maybe there was knowledge there, and they covered it up because the world was not ready for it, because there were so many bad people in the world that should not have had the knowledge. And here's humanity all over again. We're taking the blame straight away. Or something bad happened, that was us. It was us. It's always us. We're born guilty. We're born with sin, we're born guilty, we must be guilty. And I'm wondering if, let's say that thing was a place where they connected to something else and the problem wasn't here, the problem was out there. Again, no, not in the heavens, no. In the heavens, everything is great. They're wonderful beings of light on a higher level of enlightenment or whatever. The problem was here, that's why they covered it up. What if the problem was on the other side? We're digging it up and we might even try to make that thing work again or whatever, if that was technology. We shouldn't be so ready to assume that we are the ones that are wrong. So there's the thing. It could have been just that we were given speech and we didn't practice the other anymore, or we did deliberately cover ourselves up, cover up the instruments, the buildings or whatever that we used for those connections, to break the connections with something out there that was no good, not us, them. And here's the last thing, and that is the way, especially with the rise of the church, the Roman Catholic Church for starters. Well, that was the first united church, wasn't it? Well, the spiritual was no longer allowed. People that gained knowledge on the spirit, especially knowledge that did not conform with the teachings of the church, they were burnt at the stake. Or they had to go into hiding. Or they had to hide their knowledge, bury it somewhere or whatever. So it was not allowed. Although, I would say, I don't know, again, we may have forgotten, even the highest hierarchy of the church may have forgotten what the whole thing is about. But it seems it is allowed as long as there are the few that are connected to one point, one God, one other consciousness, and then it becomes the influencer for the affairs of man. But there can be only one. Again, that's the thing. It's not that there is only one, but it is like there can be only one allowed, and the rest is not allowed. Again, that might be what Jesus was speaking about when he said the broad way of all or many influences is the way into destruction. Go with the one. Narrow it down. So those that have a connection to the one, let's say the one God, the one other consciousness, that was allowed. Connection to knowledge that came from somewhere else on the spirit was not allowed. There can be no other God. And what is most certainly not allowed is us connecting to one another. That is the biggest no-no on earth. We are not to connect to one another. And that is exactly what we need to do. That is exactly what we need to do. Again, for that, we need to be able to or know how to. That's another thing that is stopping me. How do you direct this thing correctly? How are you the master of your own energies? That you are the one that is directing where this thing is going, where we can actually connect to one another without going that far out that we're connecting to that which we should maybe stay clear of. In fact, right now, if we are going into the spiritual, if we're going into the connections, if we're going to the level of the field where we can communicate with each other and where we are one because we are still speaking the same language, and getting to that knowledge and getting connected to one another without going out too far. Again, and there is regulating this thing. Because once you go in there, it's like you're getting into a stream and you may be swept out to infinity and beyond. And is this thing, is that something that the old teachings are telling us? How to regulate this thing? Or did they not know either? Is that why there's knowledge coming from here, there, and everywhere? Because they were not in control of their own spirit. And I really think those are all things that we should consider. I most certainly consider as a person before I even go there or attempt to go there. I believe it's real. I believe it can be done. Yeah? But here, no. It's not, I can, therefore I shall, and to hell with the consequences. Absolutely not. And that's not wisdom. And those are all questions we should at least attempt to answer before we go into this newfangled future, running into it without knowing what it is we're doing. So there you go. So that was my thought for today. I do believe there is a united field of consciousness. And it just means that there is a level on which we all speak the same language. And it's not words. And it seems to me that at the moment, if we bring the knowledge down to earth, it takes different forms. It can take the form of music, it can take the form of buildings, paintings, stories. But if they are truly spiritual, they are a download, and then the person expresses that download in his own individual way. Yeah, can we communicate with each other without trying to bring it down to earth, but all of us going up to that level where we are connected? And then how do we control what it is we're connected to? How are we the master of our own energies? And that is then complete self-determination, and it needs to be self-determination on every level. And at the moment, as I said, I don't think it's allowed. We're allowed to connect, or some are allowed to connect to a certain point and to bring the knowledge from there. But we're most definitely being prevented from connecting to each other. Biggest no-no in heaven and earth. That man should know himself, or that we should know each other. Because on the physical, we are divided, we're speaking different languages, we don't know what we're doing, and in that state we can be led and ruled over. Right, folks, I leave it at that for today, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.